Hello and welcome to Earth Optimism. I'm your host, Yohannis Lamere, and today we're going to explore the field of conservation as a possible career. There are many different opportunities in conservation. Over the course of this series, we have met fashion designers, drone pilots, artists, and museum curators. Today, we will be introducing a series of people who decided to work in research and science. Let's ask why they choose their career, what is their work like, and how did they get their start?
All right, are we ready? So
Don't strum it like that.
I won't strum it. Hey guys, I'm Maddie Safaya from NPR and Joe's Big Idea. We're here at the Smithsonian's Museum Support Center, and we are about to check out the largest collection of whale bones ever.
You could think of me as a marine mammal detective through geologic time. I look to the past to track down whale bones to understand how whales came to be and where they're going. This is what I generally just call a whale warehouse. This is a place where we keep whale specimens, fossil from extinct species and modern ones from species that are alive today. And they're all under one roof. And that makes it a unique kind of place.
Why whales?
So why whales? I'm not a whale hugger.
Your socks would say otherwise.
Yeah, I got interested in whales because I thought they were fantastic vehicles to understand evolution. I think that's the job of any paleontologist, is trying to understand what happened in the history of life that we didn't see. We want to know those things, and it's a big detective story. How do we figure it out?
What do we got?
15.7. So
Big head,
Yeah.
bigger brain.
this happens to be the largest single specimen of blue whale jawbone that is in any museum, period.
Wow.
And consequently, because dinosaurs did not have a single bone that was larger than this one, these are the largest single osteological elements of any organism in the history of life on Earth.
That's amazing. Does that ever get lost on you?
No, it doesn't. It actually, it kind of challenges me to think of the right scientific question to ask of this material. Because you could think about, well, how does a blue whale actually grow a bone this large? What are the physics involved with feeding with jaws this large? Those are all questions that can be investigated using these museum collections. We have, across all these shelves, the skulls of fossil whales. And I'm going to lift off the jacket just like this. I think it's tremendously cute.
Wow, it's crazy to think about how old these things are.
Yeah, right. And you can actually touch them, right? This is...
Wait.
Yeah.
I can touch them?
Yeah, well, you strummed a cast, so you might as well
Yeah.
graduate to this level.
That's
So,
awesome.
There's your time travel for the day.
It's like 11 million years old. I'm going to touch it again.
Sure, go for it. That's going to cost you. So again, this imaginative process of looking into the Earth, into past snapshots, those give us clues about the potential future states of where we're heading. And I also think that that's something that we still control. We don't know how the future is going to shake out. We do know that these systems are dynamic and complex and can respond abruptly. They can respond in ways that we can't foresee, but we are a part of it. I think of humans as being participants in this great experiment that we're undertaking. We just need to be more aware of that.
This is Madeline Safaya reporting from the mouth of a whale. Nick Pyenson also here.
It's my day job, so it's not that big of a deal.
Everyday
to me.
situation for him.
Deep reefs are natural extensions of shallow water coral reefs. They extend down to 1,000 feet or more. They are largely unexplored ecosystems. There's this zone between about 150 and 1,000 feet that science has largely missed. My name is Carol Baldwin, and I'm the director of the Smithsonian's Deep Reef Observation Project, or DROP for short. DROP is using a manned submersible that goes to 1,000 feet or 300 meters to explore and monitor biodiversity on deep reefs. We are using autonomous reef monitoring structures, which are little reef condominiums made of PVC plates stacked on top of one another, and you can capture a sample of much of what is living on that reef. In Curacao, we are using these arms on shallow reefs, but thanks to the availability of the submersible, we're also deploying these for the first time globally at deep reef depths. So it's a phenomenal new, very powerful tool that's allowing us to very easily capture the diversity that's living on reefs. DROP is bringing together people who study fishes and crabs and algae and mollusks and echinoderms, and having everybody focus their attention on this one ecosystem so that we're not just coming away with an idea of what the fish fauna is, but we're learning about the entire deep reef community. We would love to see Curacao become an affiliate member of the Smithsonian's Global Earth Observatories, or SI Marine Geo. And I think you can see that if we're finding that much new biodiversity in a tiny plot of water, that we've really only scratched the surface in terms of understanding what lives on deep reefs.
Now, let's travel around the world to Africa, and more specifically Kenya. What if your job was protecting the black rhino?
We currently have 696 individuals in the entire country, with 62 of those found at Oljogi, which is Kenya's second largest rhino sanctuary. I am Maureen Wanjiku Kamau. I'm a wildlife veterinarian from Kenya. We recently began a rhino endocrine study. Research has been identified as a critical need to help them with their reproduction. We are using a non-invasive technique. We are training the rangers at Oljogi to collect the fecal samples from the black rhinos. They play a critical role in monitoring the individuals. Collection of stool gives you a snapshot of the individual's hormone status at that time, and with that we'll come up with endocrine profiles that inform us on the reproductive status,
so that we can have many rhino babies to increase the eastern black rhino population.
Wild animals especially are nature's gift to us. Our efforts to conserve the animals and their ecosystem is our gift back to nature.
Next, let's meet the man who cares for the giant pandas back at the Smithsonian National Zoo.
Since I was 3, I've always had a passion for animals. But I could never have imagined that I would be here one day working with the panda bears.
This is for Tian here. Okay, that works. Let's do it.
In the Smithsonian, along with our colleagues in China, are the force pushing for the conservation of the species. The panda bears are very tame and are always eating. We always have to give them a lot of food, especially bamboo. Each one has its distinct personality, and there's one particular that is very special for me, Bao Bao. Bao Bao's birth was basically a miracle. It's not easy for this species to procreate.
Hey, Shaq.
The panda bears are very special, but they're the tools that we use to educate the public, to teach people what they can do to be part of the species conservation. Not only the pandas, but other species that are also threatened. It is very important for me, as a Hispanic, to teach other Latinos to get into this career.
And now, let's see what it's like to curate and care for small mammals at the National Zoo.
I love working here with the golden lion tamarins. I started working at the Smithsonian, actually in the Small Mammal House, in 2007. In the 1970s, the golden lion tamarin population in Brazil were critically endangered, and Brazilian scientists really sounded the alarm. Animals that had been confiscated from the pet trade were actually able to be brought into zoos from across the world, and the National Zoo was one of the zoos that was able to house them and create a captive breeding program that allowed for even more babies to be born here, which eventually led to larger populations in zoos. It's been an excellent opportunity to be involved with this species, to learn, and then let us to reintroduce them into the wild. So going to Brazil for the first time, I was nervous, but once I met all the Brazilian staff, they made me feel like family. To then walk out into the forest and see the tamarins was inspiring. It was amazing. There's still so much to do. A species is never really saved. We have a lot of work still to continue, and we can only do that with a partnership with the people of Brazil.
And now, let's take a look at another scientist in the field.
The Asian tiger mosquito entered Panama in 2002. In less than 10 years, it colonized more than 70% of the national territory. How is it possible that a mosquito that only flies 300 meters can colonize a country so aggressively? The mosquito is actively using the transfer of used tires that are available throughout the main roads of the country. And in this tire, that probably comes from a shop in Panama City, there are eggs, larvae, and pupae. By involving the homeowners, asking permission and explaining what the project is about and the interest we have, they open their doors completely and let us work in their homes. Mosquitoes are without a doubt the most dangerous animals in terms of public health. We are trying to understand their behavior so we can devise sustainable control strategies. We are making sure that the army of people working against the mosquito grows exponentially, making our fight more effective.
And now, before we meet her in person, let's see our first guest, Smithsonian senior scientist, Dr. Kim Komatsu, at work in the field.
My name is Kim Komatsu, and I'm a senior scientist with the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. And I am a scientist who works with the Working Land and Seascapes Initiative of the Smithsonian, where we're trying to do science that will help promote the benefit of both people and nature. So we're currently standing in a cornfield, but the crop that I mostly work with is soybeans. Soybeans are really important for the U.S. economy. The amount of acreage planted in soybean in the United States would fill the state of Missouri 2 times. And it's number 2 in terms of dollar amount produced, only behind corn in the United States. So there's a lot going on below ground in these agricultural fields that most people don't think about because it's not clearly visible to us. In particular, there's lots of bacteria below ground that can help the crops that we're growing. And for plants in the bean and pea family, like soybean, there's a certain type of bacteria called rhizobia that they associate with that provide the plants with nutrients that no other plants have access to. The plants give sugar to the bacteria, while the bacteria give nitrogen that they take from the atmosphere to the plants. So we know that these bacteria can provide nutrients to the plants to reduce our reliance on fertilizer, but they could also potentially be beneficial to the plant in terms of resisting drought or insect pests, so we can rely less on irrigation and pesticides, which could both be beneficial to the environment, but also save the farmers money.
And direct from the field, it is my pleasure to welcome senior Smithsonian scientist, Dr. Kim Komatsu. So tell us, Dr. Komatsu, why did you decide to become a scientist? What drew you to this field of study?
Well, thank you so much, Johannes, for the opportunity to come and talk to you here today. I grew up in California in the United States. And when I grew up, I looked out around the environment around me, and I would see these beautiful golden hills around me every summer. And I thought the plant species that turned the hills these beautiful golden colors were so wonderful. And then I became a conservation scientist when I learned that they were actually all invasive species. So they were brought over to be able to be forage or food for cattle. And they actually are really damaging to the environment. They cause a loss of biodiversity, and they can be really flammable, so they can cause bad fires during the summers. And so really this got me thinking from a very early age about conservation issues and how we can use conservation science to really both serve people's needs as well as serve nature.
Wow. And what skills and education were required for you to do what you do now?
So I study plants and insects and bacteria. And so I have a lot of skills in identifying these different organisms. So both plant and insect identification visually, but also I use DNA sequencing to identify soil microbial organisms as well. So bacteria and fungus in the soil. But really what I think it takes to be a good scientist is being able to come up with good questions and then being able to design experiments or some sort of data collection to be able to address those questions that you come up with. So you can always learn new techniques or new methods of doing something as long as you come up with a really good, compelling scientific question.
Now, we have a question from an Indonesian student who is participating in the U.S. Embassy's English Access Program.
My name is Taufik from Islamic Senior High School, Palangkaraya. I'm the participant of U.S. Embassy's English Access Microscholarship Program Palangkaraya. I would like to ask, what do you enjoy most about your job and what are your least favorite part of your job? Thank you.
That's a really great question. There's so many things that I love about my job, but I think my favorite thing would be all the great people that I get to work with. So most conservation scientists don't work by ourselves, isolated in a lab. Instead, we have really great groups of people around us that we get to interact with. So that includes other scientists, as well as people who are on the ground employing the conservation or management techniques that we come up with. And so getting to work with all of these varied people from around the world who have the same common goal is really fun. And I would also add that it's great to be able to travel around the world and see all these different sites that we're studying. And potentially a downside to some of the work that I do is sometimes when you're out in the field collecting data, it can get really hot, or there could be maybe lots of mosquitoes around. But really, I love being outdoors. And so I would say there's no downside to my job. I just love every part of it.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Komatsu. You have a very interesting career, and we appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Johannes.
Our next guest is Dr. Daniel Lumbantobing, who is a research fellow at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. Tell us about what you do at the Smithsonian and why you decided to follow that field of study for your career.
I'm a research fellow at Fish Division Natural History Museum, Smithsonian Natural History Museum. So I focus on freshwater fishes. So I study the diversity of these fishes. And I also focus on my area of focus is Southeast Asia. So I've been collecting a lot of fishes from islands in Indonesia, from Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, and recently even I get to collect in Sulawesi. So there are a lot of fishes that I've been collecting. And what's next that I need to do is try to identify the fishes. If we are lucky, we will get new species that haven't been known to science. So my job is to try to describe the species, give the name, and try to classify these fishes into the biological sense. And also at the end, usually we also try to figure out how these species related to each other. For example, if we have species A from Java, and we want to know how the species, evolutionarily speaking, related to other fishes in Sumatra and Kalimantan. And there are several ways to do that. And I do genetic analysis using DNA, trying to figure out the evolutionary tree. And also I used morphological data. So basically, in general, trying to get the anatomy, certain characters from the bones, for example, from the soft tissues. And why do I pursue the career in Smithsonian? It's because one of the best museum in the world. And it's such a great opportunity because they have so many good facilities for me to get the data that needed. Even they are mostly sophisticated facilities that can gather so much data, good quality data that is needed in my research.
Do you have a favorite aspect of your job or anything you don't particularly like to do, but it is necessary work?
My most favorite aspect in my job is doing field work. That is the best time for doing my job, professionally speaking. I can collect species as many as possible, and then the lab work is also great because you spend trying to figure out what you have and trying to get the data. But when it comes to the least favorite, I would say that when I have to deal with computer software to analyze my data, usually I use this in order to get this evolutionary relationship between species. And when it comes to computer, I'm not really a good at doing computer thingy. And also when you start to learn software, you need to begin everything from scratch, and it needs a lot of patience, a lot of time to learn how to use it, and a lot of things going on. For example, if there is like problems that I cannot solve and I need to consult to other people.
We have a question from an Indonesian student who is participating in the US Embassy's English Access Program.
Hi, my name is Nabila Zahra from Senior High School Muhammadiyah Bima. I'm the participant of US Embassy's English Access Micro Scholarship Program. So, I have a question. Why is career in conservation science a good idea? Thank you.
It's a good idea because especially for Indonesian people, we are a country with mega biodiversity. So there is a big burden for Indonesian to maintain this mega biodiversity, to maintain that there is no species got extinct. Who else would do that? I mean, if it's not from the Indonesian people itself, why do we need to maintain this mega biodiversity? Because each species has its own ecological role in this big network of ecosystem. And when you take one species and the species become extinct, that would affect the whole system. And that's not good for us, even for human eventually, because it would jeopardize our life eventually, ultimately. So that's why it is really not only noble kind of job, but also something necessary to be done. So we need a lot of people to do this, or at least to be very, very concerned about the issue of biodiversity and how to maintain them to keep sustainable. Even though we have to use them, but we have to use them in a sustainable way. So that's why conservation is really important, especially in Indonesia.
I'm so happy that you could join us today and tell us about your career as a scientist. Thank you so much, Dr. Lumban Tobing. So, what do you want to do to protect our planet? We all have a contribution to make no matter what profession we seek. That is what Earth Optimism is about. All of us are in this together. Once we see that success is possible, the only question is, where do we start next? I hope that you too will become an Earth Optimist. It has been my pleasure to spend this time with you. I hope you have learned as much as I have. But if you would like to learn more, please visit our website, earthoptimism.si.edu for more information and resources. Thank you.